What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Average Aaron's Auto Videos, and today we're going to be replacing a strut on a 2006 Buick Rainier. It is the all-wheel drive V8 version, and that matters if you are going to pick up parts for it. So what I want to show you is the old and the new. Now they look a little different, and if you talk to different stores or you buy them from, hey, we don't have the exact part, but they've got a very similar one, so don't worry if they don't look identical. But the part number that I'm using and we put on there is 37242. So you have that working for you. And then I just want to show you the difference of what it looks like on you. So I've got the car jacked up already, and you can see it fit in there nicely all the way up, and it's an 18 millimeter. So really the only thing you need for this is your lug wrench to get the tire off, and then an 18 millimeter ratchet and an 18 millimeter wrench. So you also will need two jack stands. You'll have one to jack up the car, and as we'll get into in the video, you'll need one to jack up the axle a little bit once you go to try to put one of the two bolts on the shocks. So you can see it's right up here. Now I've also pre-sprayed these with a little bit of WD-40 and a little bit of this PB Blaster, this penetrating lubricant, to help me get these bolts off because the car is a little old and needs some help. All right, so we already have the center cap taken off with a flathead screwdriver gently so you don't scratch it. We're gonna remove these lug nuts and then I'll show you what it looks like underneath. All right, guys, as you can see, I got a friend removing the tire over there, so you might hear a little bit of squeaks, but I've chosen to jack it up right here, and then I've got an extra jack stand supporting it over here. All right, so now that I got the tire out of the way, just to replace this part, you'll need to remove this 18 millimeter bolt right here, and this one right here. Now, what I recommend doing is putting a jack underneath here and keeping this shock at the exact point here, because otherwise when you go to try to remove the bolt, this component of the axle is going to want to drop on you and going to make it hard to get that last bolt out. So let me get the other jack in there so you can see what that looks like. All right, so I've got the jack supporting this piece of the car, and I didn't lift it, I just got it into where it's kind of holding it. That'll allow me to remove those two 18 millimeter screws on the other side a little better. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I've got this 18 millimeter up here removing this bolt, but there is a spinny bolt on the back side up there where you need to get a wrench to hold it so it doesn't freely spin as you're loosening it. So you'll need two. All right, so on the upper bracket, the 18 millimeter on the inside is kind of like captured in by a ring so it can freely spin, but it won't come out. So don't be surprised if that little nut doesn't come off and it stays up there. It's held in place, so that is not an issue. Also, once I got it off, it did move a little bit on me. So whether you take the top one off first or the bottom, there's just gonna be a little bit of friction, but don't worry about that. And then the bolt that comes off there is, it's fairly long. All right, so as you can see, the bottom bolt is super tight. So for me to hit a ratchet, to fit a ratchet head on here and get the bolt out doesn't work. So I definitely will say start with removing the top. That way you can get this one off a lot easier, and you can spin it with your hands and remove the head of the ratchet so that the bolt comes out. It is literally the same size as this space here, like super tight. All right, we're gonna grab the new one, let's put it on. All right, so here is the new shock, and the part that just has the center head here is gonna be your top, and the part that has the little bit of the T-junction here is gonna be the bottom. All right, so we've started with the top to put the install in. So once you put the bolt in, you can start screwing it in there. And I will say, let me get the light here so you can see it just a little bit better. I will say that I would recommend not tightening this down all the way. That way you have the most amount of flexibility to align this bottom component right here. All right, so we've got the bottom lined up here, and we're gonna take the bolt, but as you can see, it's a little low. So we're gonna jack up the bottom until this bolt fits in there. And I don't want you to watch me playing with it, the bolt the whole time, but it should go in fairly simply. Go start small increments here as you lift up. And it should, I may have to come down just a little bit on the jack here, or lift up a tiny bit more. Maybe, yep, up just a tiny bit more. All right, boom, there it is. And now we're gonna tighten it on. All right, so we tightened in the bottom bolt as hard as we could, tightened in the top bolts, because remember we didn't tighten that down, so you gotta go back and do that. Now, what I need to do is I'm gonna use the jack, and I'm gonna lower it so you can see the spring, or the strut, kind of compress. So I'm gonna have my cameraman hold it for me while I slowly lower it down. All right, so what you wanna focus on is right there. And you should see that drop a little bit as the weight of the axle and some of the suspension pulls it out. That's okay. It's supposed to do that. And once we get the tire on there and then set the car down, you'll see it'll sit a lot lower anyway. That's how it's supposed to be on there. All right, we got the new part in there. You can see it's installed and it's working. We lowered the car and it's on there. So if you got any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Be sure to hit that like or subscribe button as well. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.